So today I really want to focus on this idea of belovedness, which when I searched the word belovedness, I discovered belovedness is not actually a word. Beloved is, but belovedness is a word that an author named Henry Nouwen that I love uses, but it's not actually a proper English term. So I think he's Dutch. He invented an English term. But that's what I want to focus on today. I had a pretty wild week. It started out normal, and then I learned that a friend's dad had passed away, and then I had to go up to Northern California kind of last minute, so I had to scramble and get some stuff together. But this idea of belovedness as it relates to belonging became an amazing theme all throughout this week. Belonging meaning I don't think we can have a sense of our own belovedness without belonging. I think that belonging is kind of the key to unlocking that sense of I am loved not only by the people around me, but also by God. And most of all, and I think like in a space like this, it's most important to say like, most of all by myself. Like I actually love myself. The first thing that kind of happened that was wild is I didn't have a plan. I have ADHD. I'm also an alcoholic. I don't plan anything. So I was like, I'm going to drive up there. My wife was like, well, where are you going to stay? I was like, I don't know. I'll text someone. Like, someone will be around. And I got in the car, and we have an EV as well. So, like didn't plan that either. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about the fact I'm going to have to charge. So I had like 20% left on my car, and I was like, I need to find a charger like immediately, like right now. And the closest one was in Cambria while I was driving up, and so I like took a left and I went into Cambria. And Cambria is right before Big Sur starts. It's like this really cool coastal town, and I stopped there and I charged, and I was like, this looks like a cool place to spend the night. So I hopped on Hotels Tonight. Has anyone ever used that app? Yeah. It's awesome. I popped on, I found this really crazy little motel that was very cheap, and I went, cool, bing, and then I charged my car up fully, and then I was on Instagram, because that's how we all spend any moment we're not like just looking, and I found out that Big Sur, that Highway 1 had actually opened that day. So it was literally like, oh man, I can drive up the 1 instead of going up the 5, which the 5 is like murder if anyone has ever done. The 1 is like a drastic shift in like appeal. So I was like, oh my gosh, I can do that. And then I found out I had like an extra like buffer because of my lack of planning. The funeral was the day after the day I thought it was. This is a common theme in my life. So I was like, oh my God, I have like a full other day. So I decided to take my time going through Big Sur. And it was amazing. If you can do it, don't plan it, I guess, but just go. It was unbelievable. It looks otherworldly out there, and I was one of like the first couple people. Like everywhere I would stop, people would be talking about. The business owners would be talking about. No one has been here in like so long, especially near the southern coast, because no one wants to drive all the way down there and not be able to get through to Cambria. So there were all these amazing stops along the way. Everyone was in a super good mood. Like no one was mad in Big Sur. And I realized I was on it's called Nepente or Nepent, I'm not sure what it's called. It's on the top of a mountain. It looks like Mount Olympus, and it's just a really cool restaurant. And I had this amazing moment where I was sitting and there was no space, and I was one person, like they hardly get that. I was like, it's just me, and they're like, okay, sad guy. So I was like, I'll take a seat wherever you can put me, and they put me at the bar. Now you saw my name, I'm a recovery pastor, so being at the bar for me was an interesting experience, but I realized the last time I was there, I was very much not sober. It was a couple of years back, and I'd taken this trip with my wife, and we sat at that same bar, and I was doing very different things. And I got to sit there unstirred. There's a beautiful word called apatheia that doesn't mean apathetic, but it's like the root of that, which means that you can stand in front of something and not care, but simply recognize and be unstirred by that experience. So I was unstirred, and I realized there was this like warm, fuzzy feeling. I was like, oh man, I'm just happy, like without doing anything. Like I'm just eating a chicken sandwich at a bar, and I'm looking out at this incredible view, and I'm on my way up. Long story, I'm gonna get to the later part, which was the funeral in a minute. Yay! But I came back late last night. It's about 10:30, and I'm so tired. Like I've been in the car all day. The trip was an extra day, and I spent most of that in the car. And so I kind of just like waddled out of the car, And I went back into the home. My daughter's asleep. My dog is barking like crazy because he's grumpy. And I pet my dog. And I have this fork in the road moment where I'm like, I could go to bed right now. I'm preaching tomorrow. Or I could watch that new Ben Affleck movie on Netflix. So I did that, and I went into the other room and fired that. I'm not going to judge the movie. Anyway, I watched like 15 minutes of it, and then all of a sudden I heard this like, yep, yep. If you think that's a smoke alarm, it's not. It was outside. And I went, what is going on here? And I turned, my wife is asleep on the couch. That's what I watch TV. She sleeps on the couch. And I turned around and I was like, hey, do you hear that? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, do you think that's like a coyote or something? And she's like, I don't know, like check out outside. So I went outside with a flashlight and I heard this like, whoop, whoop. And I was like, what is that? And it sounded like it was like almost in pain. So I was like, is it a cat? Is it something? And my flashlight goes around and there's this box sitting there on the side of the road right in front of our house. And there's this tiny little head that pops out. And it's this little puppy. I have a picture of him right here. Somebody had literally, yeah, right? Does anybody want this puppy, by the way? I didn't even think about that. We need, yeah, if anybody's in the market for a puppy, amazing. Because that brings me to my next point. I don't know what to do with this puppy. But the puppy was there. And I realized this was like, I was so tired, and part of the reason I was watching the movie is I'm procrastinating because I realized like, I have no idea how I'm starting this sermon tomorrow. And then this puppy emerges and I'm like, I know how I'm starting this sermon tomorrow. So selfishly, the puppy was very helpful on a creative level. But I walked towards the puppy in the dark, and I realized at this moment, I was like, you know that moment where you jump in to something and then about 2 steps in, you realize like, oh, this is gonna be like there's real weight to this. Like, this is a real living creature, and what am I doing? How am I? But there's no one else. So I stepped in, and I grabbed the box, and then I really scared the absolute crap out of my wife, because I tapped on the window, and she, like, sprang to, and she's like, what? And I'm, like, holding a puppy, like, like I found out there. And if I'm good at jumping into those situations, what Chelsea is absolutely incredible at is actually following through with those situations. So she immediately runs out, grabs it. I was scared to touch the puppy. I didn't know what was going on. Chelsea grabs the puppy and is like right here, right? I put our dog in the other room, and this is the other crazy part about this, is that our dog had been not feeling well, so we made this like chicken and rice thing, and we're on ChatGPT trying to figure out, do we need to go get puppy food? Like, what do we do? And it says, listen, like puppy food is okay. And this is, you know, ChatGPT. It's like it's an expert or something, but it was the closest we had. And it said, if you don't have that, like just have chicken and rice. And we had that in the fridge. So we took that out and we fed the puppy, and the puppy ate like it was a ferocious animal, and it could barely stand up. And then we put it back in its little box, and we found a new box, by the way, because that box was awful. It was covered in dirt. We don't know how long he'd been out there, and he fell right asleep, like out cold. And we took him into our room in that box. Meanwhile, my dog is not happy about this at all. Like, he's like, what is this? What's happening? Put him in our room, and I just sat there stunned out of my mind, because it really hit me that, like, I was like, this is probably the first time he's like slept safely, maybe in his whole life. He's tiny. And when I'm talking about belonging and thinking about belonging and belovedness, what it means to be pulled into someone's home, what it means to be pulled into the abundance of God, is just that we can rest easy, that we can actually sleep and rest, that we can feel like it's safe enough to actually be beloved. Thomas Merton says this about the soul. He says that the soul is like a scared, timid animal, and that all of the situations, all of the atmosphere has to be just right for that thing to feel comfortable enough to reveal itself and step out of the cave. And I think about that when it comes to this idea of belonging. And there's a model for it. I think it's broken down into 3 things. And this is kind of like a rhythm of growth for your soul or for your heart, wherever you want to call it. But I think it breaks down to these 3 things, and we have that list there. Yeah, forgetting, which is forgetting my own belovedness, And this happens all the time. This can happen in anxiety. This can happen in fear. The next step in that is remembering. So that's actually like what the word religion means in the Latin is to religio, to reconnect. So we gather here, Corey says this all the time, we gather here to wear off the collective amnesia of the world, right? That we remember the story, remember what's going on. And then finally, and I think this is the most important part, is beholding. That word beholding, this is old school Southern Baptist preaching of me, that word beholding happens 1,500 times in Scripture. And that's said by God or Jesus. Beholding. I think the difference between beholding and remembering is that we're actually not doing it alone. That to behold something is to be held in something. And that this takes a village and it takes a community. And it's modeled in this one story in Scripture. I'm gonna do a very non-Southern Baptist thing right now. I'm not actually gonna read the Scripture, and I feel a lightning bolt coming from my seminary education, but it's so long. Actually, Kenny, do you have it? Can you just flip through them real quick, and we can just play, look, and the dog's in the background. It's like 20 pages long, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give like a Cliff Notes version of this, and I love that the puppy is behind it, just staring at it. Basically, a father has two sons. In an ancient context, in an ancient society, that the rules are unfamiliar most of the time to us, but he has two sons. One is the elder son, one is the youngest son. And a compassionate view of this story is that youngest son is actually really angry about the system. So he doesn't get anything compared to that older son when his father passes away. The older son is going to inherit everything. That's going to be, like, he's the top dog, and then this younger son is only going to get the scraps of that situation. Right? So this younger son rallies against that system. He gets really angry. And I think this is the forgetting piece in that story, that he's forgetting his own belovedness because he's getting wrapped up in what should be. And I think that is absolutely telling for how often we let go of our own belovedness. That I forget who I am because of fear, because I want something else, because I think something else could be better than what could possibly come after this or what I can't write, like that I know the right way. It's a really fast way to let go of my own belovedness. And so he goes to his father and he says, I would like my inheritance now, which that doesn't sound that insane to us right now. It is the worst thing you could say in that ancient context. It is essentially saying to your father, I wish that you were dead. I want you dead. I want what's mine, and I want out of here. And what's incredible, and again, the father figure in this is the God figure, and it shows us the character of God. And that's the most important thing to remember in this story, is that is the character of God, and these are character traits of whatever God is, whatever that higher power is. And what's amazing about this is the most grace-giving moment in the world is that God does not smite him, say, no, you can't have that. He says, yes, here you go. It probably broke his heart. He was like, yeah, I'm going to divide up the thing. And then in the story, it's really interesting. It says he lingers for a couple of days, which meant a very awkward couple of days with your father after you've told him I'm leaving. And he leaves, and he goes off, and he goes into wild living. And this is where the recovery aspect happens of it. This is where we call hitting bottom, right? So he goes out. He goes to a distant land, and in the midst of this, he's still forgotten who he is, right? But this is where the beautiful period of remembering comes. There's a verse in there where it says that he comes to his senses. He's at the lowest point he can be. He spent all of his money, all of the inheritance, and now he's working on someone else's field, and he's so hungry that he looks at the food that the pigs are eating, and he says, that looks great. I really want some of that, and no one would give him even that. And in this moment of complete bottom, he looks and he goes, there's got to be something else. So he remembers. And this is that step two. It's remembering. He remembers and he comes to his senses. And he says, there are so many servants in my father's house. Don't they eat so much better than this? Maybe I'll go back and I'll tell my father, Father, I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me a servant in your household. There, I quoted it, so I did it. And I like to think that he practices this speech all the way back from that distant land. It's kind of like when you're on the road to break up with someone or something, and you're repeating over and over in your head, or you need a raise, and you're like, I'm going to tell the boss this. And he's just repeating over and over again, I've sinned against you. I don't deserve, make me a servant, make me a servant. And this is where the picture of beholding comes in. when the father sees the son coming from a really long way off, he runs towards him. And in an ancient context, running was not honorable. In fact, if you were the patriarch of a family, everything you would do would be intentionally slow, because that was honor, and to run was shame. If you look at the steps of the temple going up to where you would atone for your sin, they're actually mismatched, and it was so that you would have to intentionally walk slowly and pay attention to where you were going. To be slow was the honorable mode. And there's no honor in this. He doesn't care about the shame. He just runs towards his son. And in this beholding moment, he grabs the son, he embraces him, and the son says, "Father, I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." And before he can even finish his sentence, the father says, "Bring the robe, bring a ring, put sandals on his feet, kill the fattened calf. We're having a party." And in the context of this story, I think the thing we lose, because it is so ancient and it's so condensed, even though it's very long in Scripture, is that when he's running through, in this kind of society, if there's like a patriarch or family that has a fattened calf, that's like a lot of wealth, like a significant amount of wealth. So he's running through this whole town to get to his father, and the whole town would have witnessed this embrace of the father running through the town as well, and then the son coming there. And the father does this thing, again, the characteristic of God at play here. The father does this incredible thing where he says, "Everyone who just saw that, you're all coming over to our house. We're going to throw the most outrageous feast, and all of you are coming back together to see this son of mine come back." He includes the whole system. Not just the father and the son are good. And it's not just that moment of like, I'm good with God. It's that the whole community is now at play. He belongs again. And so in the way that he belongs, that's the way he can see his own belovedness. There's a brother in this story too, and the brother is very much like my dog when we brought this dog in, and he doesn't understand why this son can have this party, right? And I believe that God is speaking so clearly to most of us in that moment, where he says, "Son, all I have is yours, but this son of mine was dead and now is alive, and we have to celebrate." Right? There's this incredible moment of inclusion and belonging. And I think it's that overwhelm of belonging that helps us see our belovedness. I work in recovery, and I've studied the stats on it's really the national average of people staying in recovery for up to 10 years is abysmal. It's really bad. I'm going to tell it to you right now. If you're thinking about getting in recovery, do not let this throw you. It's really intentional that I say that, because this is something that like we can change. But right now it's 2 to 4%. 2 to 4% of people that walk through and maintain 10 years of sobriety. We find that the higher end of that spectrum are those that receive a maximum level of care, meaning 90 days or more in a facility. More than that, a nice facility. Malibu is 26 miles long. In each mile of Malibu, there are like 3 treatment centers. All of those treatment centers, nobody can afford to go to. There's only like 40 people at a given time who can even go in them. They're very small. They allow like 12 to 13 people. It's an incredibly broken system. But the worst and the best part of that is those people actually do stay sober. And I think that one of the reasons that they do is that there's this overwhelming amount of beauty, that you are in Malibu in sunshine, you're touching horses, which I guess works, and you're figuring out life in a beautiful, beautiful place. It's outrageously beautiful. And I think that in the addict or the alcoholic's mind, it takes an outrageous portion of beauty to see like 5% of that beauty. That if we're drenched in it, maybe I can catch a little bit of this thing. So it's my heart and my passion that we open those spaces up to more people. We make those more affordable. We raise a lot of money to try and get people scholarships to those places, because those places work and the best people work in them. And even though that's broken, I think we can get more people in that. That's the work of my life. I want to see more people get drenched in beautiful, beautiful places to understand their own belovedness, to understand that they belong again. belonging in my life has unfolded as I've gotten sober. When you go through addiction or you go through alcoholism, it's really isolating. So you start with this huge group of friends. I was a pastor, so I had like 300 unofficial friends. And that number dwindled so fast. And rightfully so. That was my own actions. They dwindled down and down and down until there was this like kind of core group of people. And even in that core group, some of you are here, I kept hurting people, right? And so that dwindled down even farther. And before you know it, the worst part about that disease is that moment where you are looking at the pig's food and you're going, that looks really good right now. Because I'm so alone. One of the key people in my life was my buddy Andrew. Andrew's dad is the one that passed away and that I went up to go to the funeral to. And Andrew is one of those people that like I had not cleaned my side of the street with. That's what we call that in a program of recovery. That I had tried, that we were on good terms, but he showed up for me so much in my early days of recovery. He would text me, be like, I'm flying. He lives in Nashville. He's like, I'll fly out, I'll be there, like I'll take you to the place that you need to go, and I would just leave those messages on read. His wife and I have stayed in really close contact. She's an amazing human being and person, and I don't know why I just felt safer kind of talking to Mo than I did to Andrew in those moments. But I've known Andrew since I was 14. We played in bands together. He played in this amazing band. He was 4 years older than me, and he played this incredible band that I was just like, I was in awe of him. I called him, his name is Andrew Capper, his initials are AC, and I was like, he's like AC, he's cool like AC. It's so dumb. Anyway, I loved this man. I idolized this man. Thank you for the wow. I idolized this man. And we got to open, my band was called the Blue Kazoos at that time, and we got to open up for his band called Halfway to Nowhere. And his band was this, I mean, you got to picture like 2002, the most emo band you could possibly imagine, the tightest jeans, the hair swooped to here. Andrew looks like Chris Carrabba. It was that emo, and he really does look like him. He channeled him perfectly. So anyway, we got to open for them, and it was like opening for the Beatles for me. I loved this band so much. I would listen to his CD on repeat in my stereo in my room. I shared a room with my brother. He hated that, and we would listen to it all the time. And I got to open up for this band, and it was the most incredible experience in my young life. And then the most beautiful part of that was that afterwards, Andrew came up to me, and he said, hey, man, I really liked what you guys are doing. Would you want to come over and just play some music with me? And I was like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. What do you think? and I formed this relationship with him where we would play music. And then I moved to Los Angeles, and I started working in this really Los Angeles church. There's no other way to say it. The Kardashians started this church. It was a very odd experience. Some of you know my story, and there's a lot to that. But I was charged at the age of 20 to be the youth pastor, the worship leader, and the tech director at this church. Yeah, and I made $32,000 a year. Yeah. All three roll. Anyway, that's my own resentment. Anyway, I needed a band, and I didn't know anyone in LA. Andrew was at school in Long Beach. And so I sent him a Facebook message. Yeah, there we go. Sent him a Facebook message and said, hey, man, I know I just moved down here. I'm looking for musicians. Do you know anybody who's in LA? And then he emailed me back, or Facebooked me right away and said, I can play. And I was like, oh, my God, awesome. So I had Andrew come, and he would play keys, and I would play guitar, and we would sing together. And then we started writing these worship songs together, and that became a major piece of my career for about 5 years. I would write songs with Andrew. We'd play places. We'd write songs for local churches. And he just became one of the closest friends that I have. He was in my wedding. I was in his wedding. My dad married, he and Monique. He officiated the wedding. He didn't marry into that. Anyway, that sounded weird for a second. But he became one of my closest friends. And in this piece, all of that began to like fall away in addiction. I just got farther and farther, and a lot of that was like my own stuff, you know. Like his life took off. He's one of those people that you can like go, oh, and he's like F sharp. He has this like crazy music mind, and he was writing for these huge artists in Nashville, and it was a difficult thing for me to see our lives take two very different courses. Him buying a house in Nashville, and in the stages of my early recovery, me living in my father-in-law's duplex in Woodland Hills, working for a telehealth company. Right? So it became really difficult for me to be in relationship with Andrew. But the more I got sober, the more I realized, like, that's all my stuff. And so I began reaching out to him more and more. This week, his father passed December 26th. And I found out about that through Monique, and she's like, he would really love it if you called him. And I was like, okay, I'll call him. And so I called him, didn't pick up, and I texted him, and I was just like, man, I'm thinking of you, and I'm here in whatever capacity I can be. And he shot me a message back, and he's like, it's just amazing that you reached out. Thank you. And I love you, and I miss you. And I took that opportunity right there to say, I love you, man, and I miss you, and whatever I can do to show up. And he was like, thanks, man. And I very plainly was like, I've been a really shitty friend. I hope that I can show up in more authentic ways moving forward. And just then, I realized I can actually show up, and I can actually get in the car, and I can actually go to that funeral. And so that's when I packed with no plan and got in the car and drove up. And I got to see all of these old friends that we played in bands together in those early years. And the whole thing felt like belonging. It felt whole. I'll be 5 years sober in like 2 months, God willing. And that's, thank you. And that's one of those things that when it comes back into the fold, that is the new addiction for me, is where can I make what was lost come back into my life or the people's lives around me? Like, how many spaces is that true? As I told that story, there's no doubt this is how the human brain works, that there were little pop-ups going of like, oh yeah, that reminds me of like this person or this person or this person. So I was sitting there in that funeral yesterday, I was overwhelmed with the fact that like we don't get to talk about the people we love enough from places like this until they've passed. That as I heard these eulogies, I was like, this is so special. I could go to these all day long, not in like a depressing way, but just like that I could listen to this stuff all day long. It's so genuine, it's so authentic, it's so church, it's so real. And yet, so often, that gets saved for when the person's no longer in the room. So I guess in terms of beholding and being able to behold our own belovedness, the encouragement I have for each one of us, myself included, is to find spaces that you can step into that belonging, into that belovedness, and that you can reach out to those people, and that you can do that and heal what's maybe been broken a little bit. So with that, I'd love for you to get back in those groups, and we're going to talk about this question. How can you practice belonging this week?